Atomic Habits tells you how to build a habit. It doesn't tell you which habit you should be building. That's covered in a different book, which is the subject of today's video. Hey guys, today I'm bringing you guys a book review of The Slight Edge written by Jeff Olson. So the TLDR of this book review is that I would highly recommend you reading this book if you're interested in the concept of compounding. The biggest pro of this book is that it's the only book I've found that discusses how to leverage compounding in all the important areas of our lives. Most of the time, compounding is only discussed within the context of finance or creative endeavors. For somebody who's looking to improve their life as a whole, this book serves as a great companion to James Clear's Atomic Habits, in the sense that whereas Atomic Habits serves as a technical handbook and gives you the tools to construct positive habits and disassemble obstructive ones, the Slight Edge asks you to take a strategic, bird's eye view of your life to first determine the areas that worth implementing positive habits in the first place, because it's more important to see what you should strive to improve than knowing how to improve things that just do not matter at all. After all, there is such a thing as over-optimization. Just ask any software engineer who built the perfect distributed system for his 10 users. However, my biggest criticism of this book is that its structure is not as clear as James Clear's Atomic Habits. Pun intended. Compared to Atomic Habits' crystal clear mental model, make cues obvious, cravings attractive, routines easy, rewards enticing, the Slight Edge uses 18 chapters to discuss a variety of vaguely related topics, with obscure headings intended to inspire curiosity instead of seeking to confer insights with clarity. It might be fun to sit down and reread the book after a few years, but for someone who's looking to extract a clean mental model and hopefully never have to visit the book again, it's a disaster. And my second criticism of the book is that it relies heavily on personal, anecdotal success stories. Personally, I'm not a fan of this kind of self referential storytelling. I would have preferred the points made to be bolstered with case studies of historical figures rather than tooting your own horn in the book that you're writing. A whole chapter of The Slight Edge was written by the author's daughter, who is also the president and co founder of her father's company. This kind of piggybacking on family enterprise is very reminiscent of The Righteous Gemstones. Very funny show though. After going over my reading notes, I realized that the book's value lies in the fact that it answers the most important questions regarding compounding. What is it? Why you should do it? How to do it? Where should you apply it to? And when you should start doing it. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at the answers it gave to these questions. Consider this graph. Jeff Olson pointed out that most people oscillate between survival and failure, and promises that people who practice the Slight Edge can escape this curse to reach the point of success. But what is the Slight Edge? In a nutshell, it describes the small, easy to do and easy to not do positive daily habits that compounds the important areas of your life. It's easy not to do because its result resembles Chinese bamboos. The developmental stage of the growth comes at a delay and is largely invisible. During the first 4 to 5 years, Chinese bamboos build massive root systems underground and show not much visible growth above ground. Yet, they go through a rapid spurt period and shoot up 30 meters in the 5th year just within a couple of weeks. For most people who are looking to improve themselves, they perceive the lack of growth above ground as stagnation, give up, and fall back to the failure line. Whereas people who practice the Slight Edge never stop persistently making small deposits to the stock and are able to break free from the survival failure oscillation to ride the exponential growth spurt to reach the success line. Matter of fact, they don't even stop their small periodic deposits even then. And now let's talk about why you should favor this kind of growth. What are the arguments for keeping improving the important areas of your life every single day? So the first argument is that for the most important areas in our lives, the default state is regression, which means that as long as we're not improving, we're getting worse. In Chinese, we have a saying which roughly translates to learning is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will be driven back. In software, the equivalent to this phenomenon is bit rot, which dictates that software gradually deteriorates in performance due to factors such as dependencies, APIs, even the language itself having reached their end of life, and developers' knowledge of the codebase degrades over time. The book takes it one step further and states that this is true in all areas in your life. Simply put, there's no standing still. We need to consistently put in the effort to improve things that matter to us. The second argument is when it comes to improving, the author of the book stated that in the real world, quantum leaps rarely exist. Matter of fact, a system whose growth exceeds its optimal rate of growth will cause structural damage to itself. Moreover, the compounding growth might seem negligible at the beginning, but over the long run, it's nothing to scoff at. Let's consider two mathematical equations. So the first one shows us that without compounding, improving something by even 1% every day continuously for a year makes you almost 5 times better at the end of the year compared to where you started from. However, the catch is that in areas that matter, things almost always compound. For example, as a programmer, the tasks you handle today enables you to build more complex features tomorrow. And as a reader, the insights you've distilled from the book you've just finished reading can be related to your existing knowledge and form entirely novel ideas from the connections. So instead of just netting a 365% return in your investment, the mathematical expression with compounding is really looking like this. In other words, if you keep improving by 1% on something over the course of a year, thanks to the compounding effect, you would be clearing an impressive 3,700% return on your investment. And this is why some of the wisest people of our time, such as Naval Ravikant and Charlie Munger, advocates for playing the long-term game to collect compound interest. Its exponential return over time is mathematically proven. So now we understand what's the slight edge and why we should leverage it. How should we practice it? Here, the author introduced a 4-step model: momentum, completion, reflection, and celebration. So, momentum means it's hard to get a good habit going, but once we've executed enough repetitions for it to become habitual, we can ride the momentum as it becomes easier, almost automatic. And completion means you should be working on one thing at a time to reach an agreed upon milestone to prevent open loops from draining your mental energy. Reflection means at the end of the day, you should do an analysis of your slight edge habits as an after action review, and celebration simply means you should celebrate the small wins. The only insight that I found interesting here was the analogy of the momentum of your habit carrying you as a flywheel, which is a mechanical device that leverages the conservation of angular momentum to balance the difference in your effort and ensures a relatively stable output. A flywheel gradually increases its rotational speed by converting the excess energy from high input power, whereas when the input power is low, it slows down its rotational speed to release more kinetic energy as output. And this is analogous to once you've established the habit of reading 10 pages of a non-fictional book every day, on the good days, you might read a little more than 10 pages. And on the days that you're experiencing low energy, the habit compels you or carries you forward to power through the 10 pages quota. But thanks to this habit, you're still going to clear a book per month. And the longer and the more you do this, the less willpower it requires. And to be honest, Atomic Habit is a way better handbook when it comes to how to implement positive habits. That's why I said these two books complement each other. My recommendation would be to read the Slight Edge to decide which habits to form and use the Atomic Habits to actually implement them. Speaking of which habits to form, Jeff Olson emphasizes prioritization by pointing out that there aren't many millionaires who bowl over 100. This tells us that getting good at a skill or any skill requires tremendous amount of time. Instead of indiscriminately compounding on things that you're simply obsessed with, the Slight Edge states that we should instill positive small daily habits in 7 most important areas of our lives. These include health, happiness, relationships, personal development, finances, career, and impact on the world. This is very sound advice. It gives you a high-level strategic overview of what gives value to your life. And the point is not to excel in any of these 7 areas at the expense of the other 6, but rather to not have a precipitously low shortboard, which can tank your whole system. For example, you don't want to be that excellent corporate ladder climber who estranged all his family relations and is desperate for love in his 40s. And you don't want to be a financially successful person who's obese and has stomach ulcer because of the stress. Instead, the point is to put in consistent small efforts into all 7 areas of your life, so you may be lacking in one area, but the system is still held up by the other 6 pillars. And that gives you the time to catch up on the one that is lacking behind. As long as you practice making small deposits to your 7 most important accounts, time will be on your side. And this brings us to the next topic. When should you start practicing the Slight Edge? The intuitive answer is obviously you should start as early as possible. But that would be missing the point. When you were a teenager or in your 20s, it's incredibly rare for you to have the foresight or have the access capital or time to start compounding. Steven Pressfield, the author of The War of Art, which is widely considered as the Bible on the topic of consistently working on your craft, didn't even start writing consistently until he was in his 30s, and he didn't even publish his first novel until he was in his 50s. So the point is not that you should start as early as possible, but rather not to stop once you've started. As my hero Charlie Munger once said, the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. So that concludes our book review of Jeff Olson's The Slight Edge. If you're new to this series, I publish monthly book review videos where I give you the mental model I've extracted from a well-reviewed nonfiction book in a concise, straight-to-the-point format. If you're interested in following this series, sign up for the video updates at blog.wordforce.tech. And our next book review will be on Cal Newport's Deep Work. With that said, I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye-bye.